Are we going live?
It's spinning.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Winenance Wednesday.
Hey,
This is our weekly live stream show and podcast. We talk about all things related to financial independence. We help you live a more intentional life by learning how to spend more intentionally and, of course, growing and investing your money more intentionally. We are your hosts and sisters and personal finance educators, Marie and Stephanie. Hi, everyone. And thank you so much for tuning in again this week for Winenance Wednesday. We have a really great show for you today. We're going to be talking about spending intentionally and, more importantly, tracking your expenses and just all things related to that. So we've got a really great show for you today. But to kick us off, actually, before I kick us off, wanted to give everyone a reminder that we have our Winenance workshop coming up next week, next Thursday, on October 22nd at 7 p.m. It's called Building Wealth Through Your 401k. And if you've been following us for any period of time, you know that Stephanie and I, we absolutely love our 401ks. And the reason being is that it's perhaps the biggest reason why we've both been able to build multiple six-figure portfolios within just a few years.
Yep.
And so we want to see you build that same kind of wealth. And so we're going to walk you through what to invest in for yourself, how to maximize your contributions, how to maximize growth, how to navigate your provider website, and so much more. So go to winancefi.com/workshops with an S to register for our workshop. And we hope to see you there.
Definitely. So, of course, we have to start it off with the most important thing. Who is watching and what you drinking?
What you drinking?
What you drinking today, Marie?
Oh, I'm boring. I just have seltzer tonight. I kind of felt like I had a headache today, so I just felt like I should hydrate a little bit more.
I know. I think today is an easygoing night for all of us because
Yes.
I too am going a bit easy. However, mine is a bit flourished.
Oh,
My
fancy.
beverage of the week,
Yeah, what do we got
if
going
you
on?
will, is my kombucha mocktail.
Nice. Here.
It is super easy to make. It is 8 ounces of kombucha, your flavor of choice, 1 lime wedge, and a sprig of fresh mint. And all you have to do is muddle the lime and mint together, add in a little bit of ice, the kombucha, stir, and enjoy.
So, what is kombucha?
Kombucha is a, let's see, what is it? A fermented, I had to think about it, fermented tea.
Okay.
So I actually was told, I think we have some audio issues, so hang on.
Uh-oh.
I know you can hear me, but no one else can hear me.
I did have to turn up the volume a little bit, but I thought that was just myself.
No, let me.
The magic of live, everybody.
I know.
Sorry about the technical difficulties. Let me see. Is that better, Steph?
Let's see.
I can hear you better now. You sound a little bit louder.
I switched my audio input, so hopefully, if anyone can't hear me, please let me know now.
You sound a little bit more distant, but I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, I have a different audio input, so it probably doesn't sound as good. But if you can't hear me, let me know. Otherwise, we're gonna keep going.
All right, we're gonna keep it going then. All right, so you were saying kombucha?
Fermented tea, and actually, so the one I have is Synergy Raw Kombucha, which hopefully you can see that the label's like kind of shiny and makes it difficult to see, but yeah, there we go.
Okay,
kind of
there
Synergy,
we go. Yep.
Raw Kombucha, and this flavor is Trilogy, which is let's see, tea, black tea, green tea, kiwi juice, raspberry, and lemon and ginger. So it's kind of just a fruity, flavorful beverage, and it's a nice little light thing to end your day and whatnot. And so this is my go-to when I want to have like a fun little beverage, but make it an
Not
easy
alcoholic.
night.
Yeah. Does it have caffeine in it? It's tea, so I'm thinking if it has
It doesn't.
energy.
It might have a little bit of caffeine. Actually, what it has is a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of alcohol. It has like 0.05%. I
Oh,
think
okay.
kombucha legally can only have like up to 2%. So
Mm,
that's all you can get. But you know,
gotcha.
it's good. It doesn't really do much for you other than taste delicious.
Well, it looks delicious, and I think I might have to try some kombucha after this.
All right, good.
All right. So, why don't we talk about last week's challenge of the week?
Yes. So last week's challenge of the week, we want to check in with everyone to see if
Yeah.
how you did with your challenge. So
Yes.
it was to start tracking your net worth. And we recommended using an app like Mint or Personal Capital. And we've recommended those before, and we discussed them last week and probably weeks prior. And Maria and I both use both of those apps. I also track my net worth on a spreadsheet, which I did update. So when we did it last week, that was my due date. I do it every 3 months. And I was supposed to
Great.
do it that day. I was busy, didn't have a chance to do it. So I did it that Thursday. I
Hmm.
updated it, and we grew again over the past 3 months. Yay! I
Yay.
know. So that's awesome. So that's the thing is
Yeah.
like, even though it's only 3 months, you can see these small wins. And that's one of the
Yeah.
things I love about doing it. Even if you're starting at the negative or zero or whatever you might be starting with, when you see that incremental growth, like it's so motivating. And it's like, okay, I'm
Yes.
actually doing something. I'm moving somewhere. Like this past 3 months have flown by. The last time
Hmm.
I did it was July. And, I'll say that like not a lot has happened. Like a lot has happened, but not a lot has happened financially for us. It's
Hmm.
pretty much been steady, but really just
Hmm.
all that money in the market is what's made it grow. It's not like I was saving any more than I could have or would have otherwise over the past 3 months, but money in the
Your
market,
returns.
that's the way to get that net worth up.
Yeah, your returns from being invested in the market. I heard an interesting quote today. It kind of goes along with this. I don't know if it's like a quote, but or more like a stat, but it says that most people overestimate what they can achieve in a year, and they underestimate what they can do in 5 to 10 years. Now, obviously, this scale is much larger than what you're talking about in the past 3 months, but I was thinking about this in terms of tracking your net worth, because last night I was doing the same thing. Actually, I was tracking my net worth, and I was feeling like, I don't know why I was feeling like a little defeated. Oh, I just want to see more growth. I want to see more growth because obviously this has been a slower year in terms of market returns than in years past. And my husband like gave me so much perspective. He was like, look at where we started. Like, look at where we started the year, and considering everything that has happened this year with the market downturn, especially in March, like everything that's happened this year, we are still up significantly in our portfolio. But, in my head, I'm like, I want more. And it's, I have to remember that it's that 5 to 10 year, like you're playing the long game when you're
Yep.
investing, you're
Yeah.
playing the long game. So, by the way, so I am a personal capital girl. We talk about this all the time. Stephanie is team Mint and I'm team personal capital. But um, we did talk about that personal capital has been having some issues connecting with all of our bank accounts. And
Hmm.
I've had several accounts for months that just have not been able to update. And it's been a little bit frustrating. And so I said, you know what, let me go back and check out Mint. It's been a while since I've used Mint. And I did have to go back and reconnect, my
Hmm.
some of my accounts. I had some old accounts in there. Some stuff it was like 3, 4, 5 years old that I needed
Yeah.
to get rid of. But it actually pulled all of my accounts in. It recalculated my net worth. It was actually a lot easier than I remember it being. So I might start being a little team Mint here.
I'm telling you, Mint, I will, like I said, I'm not going to say they're perfect, but
Yeah.
they have gotten a lot better over the past few years. And I will say, when they have a connection issue, like one for a free service, they have amazing customer service. Like every time I've had an issue that
Mm,
they haven't like actively said, yes, we know that, you can't connect to American Express or you can't connect to Fidelity or whoever it is.
mhm,
If it's something that I'm like, well, I don't know, is it just me or is everybody having issues? You can do a message with them and a chat with them. You can email them and they get back to you right away and they will
mhm.
follow up. I'm like, this is a free service and you're doing all
Yeah.
this? Great. So, like I said, they're not perfect, but I think that they're pretty good for what you get. And considering you're not paying anything, it's worth it. I mean,
Yes.
we're probably paying and sharing all our data, but that's everybody. At least you're getting a service
I
out
can't
of
even
it.
think about that.
I know.
But
All right.
I do think it's actually a good segue into this week's topic.
Absolutely. So, this week's topic is spending intentionally, and we're focusing on tracking your expenses, which, in our opinion, is the first step to creating a budget. So, a lot of people will say that when you start, you want to get your financial house in order, you start with a budget and you figure out how much you need to pay for all your bills and your expenses each month, and that's how much you should spend, never anymore, and all the rest of the money should go into savings. Now, absolutely, that's a great idea in theory and on paper, but let's face it, we all live in the real world. Things come up, little expenses come up here and there, and so it's impossible to stick to a budget to the T. But also, the first question is, well, how much should I be spending? And that's the thing where people kind of gloss over that fact of, well, how much really should I spend on my groceries each month? And how much of a car payment should I be able to afford, or a rent payment? How much should I spend on my fun activities, going out to eat or going out to happy hours at a bar or whatever? What are all these extra expenses that have a variable amount each month? How do you determine what's right for you? And so that's what this episode is going to be about. It's talking about really tracking your expenses, figuring out how much you're spending today so that you can figure out how much you really should be spending tomorrow and for years to come. And so we'll go into details about what that really means, how to actually apply that to your life, how to create a budget based on that information. And so that's pretty much what this episode is going to be about. I'm super excited because I think this is a topic, like I said, that I think a lot of people will not really go into depth about and kind of gloss over when they're talking about getting finances in order. But I think it's really important to take as your first step.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you really can't, whether you're pursuing financial independence or you're just trying to get, like as you say, Stephanie, get your financial house in order, you cannot do any of those things until you understand where your money is going. And that's the benefit of tracking your expenses. You need to know your numbers. We talk about this all the time, the importance of knowing your numbers. So why don't we pull up budgeting versus tracking expenses?
Absolutely. So that's kind of the first thing, is understanding what that difference is for budgeting versus tracking expenses. So a budget and budgeting is basically how much you should be spending, how you should be spending your money. We all know that, okay, I only want to spend, $200 on groceries this month, and my rent shouldn't be more than $1,500 a month, and I want my cell phone to be $60 a month, and I'm going to only go out to eat like once a month, and it's only going to be, $100 at the most for going out and having fun and doing things. And we all, we miss those things. That's where we miss the target. Whereas tracking your expenses is, like we said, the first step, and that's how much you're actually spending. So yes, you might have planned to only spend $200 on groceries this month, but in reality, you spent $300 or $400, and you plan to only go to a happy hour once because you knew your friend's birthday was coming up, and you said, well, yeah, I'm definitely going to go out for that one night. But then she had a second birthday celebration, because some of us like to celebrate our birthday all month long. And so you're not going to say no because she's your bestie.
Someone we
And so
know.
you go out that second time, and maybe a third time because your mom came in town. Who knows? Whatever it is. And so that's the thing, is that's how much you're really spending. Those are your actual expenses. And so that's what we're going to be talking about, tracking your expenses. We're not going to be sitting here saying how much you should be spending in each category. We're saying, figure out what you're spending now. What are you spending today? What have you been spending for the past 6 months? Because that's really what it is. Not even this month, because even from month to month, it can change. You might have bills like an car insurance bill or something else that comes around every 6 months or every 12 months. So your budget's going to be slightly different that month versus other ones. So that's the thing. What's your trend over the past 6 to 12 months in most of the categories that you're spending on a regular, and figuring that out. So that's what we're talking about in terms of the difference between budgeting versus tracking expenses.
That's right.
So I think what's important is to talk about first why tracking your expenses is the first step. And we kind of said that, but let's go into more detail about why this really should be your first step when you want to create a budget.
Yeah. So I think of it as like when you're setting up your budget, and you kind of mentioned this stuff, is that you really can't set up your budget without first determining how you actually spend your money, how you spend your money. So you need to understand what categories you're spending in, also what merchants that you're spending your money in. Amazon is a really good example of that has become a category for people where, because you buy everything from them, it's not like you go to, Home Depot and, 9 times out of 10, whatever you're buying from Home Depot is something home improvement related. Whatever you're buying from Amazon, when you get an order, you could get 5 different things that could fit into 5 different categories. Yep. And so you need to understand how your money is going. And I really feel like we could come up with like a whole episode just about how to categorize your Amazon.
Oh my God,
purchases.
I know, Amazon or Target, basically any place where you go where you can buy a plethora of items that just span all the categories, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the first thing. And if you're using one of those apps that we talked about before, Personal Capital or Mint, there's another one called Clarity. There's a ton of budgeting apps out there. So, finding one that you like is going to be very important. But even if you don't use an app, you can use a spreadsheet. Stephanie is a spreadsheet queen. And you can export your expenses from your bank or from your credit card. And they will have merchant categories. I cannot say that word. Yes, merchant category codes, MCCs. I work for a credit card company, so this is our lingo.
That's
MCC.
Lingo.
That is a lingo. Well, those categories actually true back to what kind of bonuses you can get. So, like if you have like an everyday credit card where you can get money back on gas and groceries, you might be buying groceries from a certain type of store, but if that store isn't a grocery store, isn't categorized by one, you won't get the points for it. So that's a little bonus tip for you guys today.
But also vice versa, because I do that. I do the credit card points, and I will buy things from my grocery store that I could get somewhere else, but I'll get extra cash back through my grocery store than I would just buying it at Target or Walmart or wherever. So I'll do that, but I have to categorize that thing differently on my tracking sheet and my budget sheet than what the credit card actually considers it.
That's right. So I'd say number one is when you're starting to build your budget, you need to understand where your money is going towards and what you're spending your money on. And then the second thing is that, you've got certain expenses that recur every single month. And then you've got, fluctuating expenses. So the things that you spend every single month would be, fixed expenses like your mortgage or your rent, your car payment. Cell phone bill, car payment, insurance. Those things are fixed expenses. It's the same exact amount every single month. You also have monthly expenses that are fluctuating expenses like gas, groceries. Although, is anyone buying gas anymore these days?
My gas bill is like practically nothing now.
I know. I haven't filled up I don't think I filled up in like 3 weeks.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's only because I drove down to see you recently. Yeah. So you have those fixed expenses and you have those fluctuating expenses, and then you have just one-off expenses too. For example, my dog, he has cardiac problems, he has heart problems, and so he has to go to the cardiologist every single year, and so that's an expense that we know is going to come up once a year, and so we either have to plan for it ahead of time, or when it does come up, we kind of need to be able to track it, and we know that our pet expenses, our vet expenses for this month are going to be through the roof, or it's how it feels to us, through the roof. So it's important to know, exactly what categories you're spending in, and detailing what are your known expenses versus, your unknown expenses. What are your fixed expenses versus your fluctuating expenses?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the thing where I remember when I first started to try to create a budget, and this was like 10 plus years ago, and before Mint was around, or before I started using it, and literally I would write it on a post-it note, and I would sit there and try to figure out, okay, well, this is how much I should be spending, but that's the reality, is that I never met those targets. Like I always missed them. So unless it was that fixed expense where I know, okay, my cell phone bill is exactly this amount of money each month, all those variable expenses, I was so far off from it, because I really had no idea how much I was spending. I knew how much I wanted to be spending, but I had no idea how much I actually was. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of the good segue to the next point of it. And I think the important thing is once you start tracking your expenses, you know how much you are typically spending in a category. Whether that is the right thing or the wrong thing for you is something that you need to determine. So the next step is, once you start to track your expenses and you see how much you're typically spending in your various categories, determining what the right amount for you is for each of those categories and figuring out a budget that fits for you. So a good example is groceries. We all want to cut back on our grocery bill, but we all have to eat. So, and fine, if you're not a grocery person and you eat out every month or whatever, that's fine too. If that's what you're doing, then do you, boo. But the thing is that you need to figure out how much you really want to be spending. So let's say for your grocery bill, it's you and your significant other, and you're spending, $400 a month on groceries. Maybe that's just how much you spend. If every month you want to only spend $200, but you always end up spending $300 or $400, then that's how much you spend on groceries. And that's fine. Don't feel bad about that. If you're getting the food you want and quality food, and it's worth it to you to be spending that much money, but that's just how much you're spending, then that's just how much you're spending. And so I think that's the key, is not feeling shame or guilt because you're spending more than, your friends or your neighbors or whoever else, comparing other people's budget to yours. I think that's the problem, is that, like, especially on a lot of the FI groups and everything in the community, people will share the information. They'll say, oh, my typical budget is $200 a month for groceries. And I'm like, $200? Like, where do you shop? And how often do you shop? I know. And that's the thing. So you need to figure out what's right for them. I have no idea. Are they feeding themselves or a family of four?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Are you buying like super high quality, expensive organic food, or are you buying like conventional, just bottom of the shelf, whatever, kind of junk food? I don't know. But again, that's the thing, is everybody's situation is different, and you need to accept what your situation is and be proud of it and own it. That's the thing. Actually, someone just posted yesterday about their grocery bill. They saw someone, their family of 3 going on 4. She's going to have a baby soon. And she sees all these people posting about their $400 grocery bill, but she eats organic, she eats, non-GMO and fruits and vegetables. So she buys a lot of like fresh meats and fresh fruits and vegetables and produce. And her bill is typically around $600. And she's like, how do I get it down to $400 a month? And I replied to her and I said, you don't. I mean, that's the reality, is, when we started shopping at Aldi's and Lidl, it definitely cut our grocery bill nearly in half, because we were spending around $600 a month at, conventional grocery stores at Safeway and Giant, which are like Kroger and ShopRite or whatever they are in other parts of the country. But your kind of traditional grocery store, I was spending $600 a month. And then when we started shopping at cheaper grocery stores, it cut in half. Some months I even spent $300. But our typical was around $400. And then this past year, I decided that we needed to start eating a little bit better. And so I buy now organic food, grass-fed, organic, dairy and organic produce. I try to buy, if it's a processed food, not a highly processed food that doesn't have a lot of conventional oils in it. All these things end up costing more money. And that's the reality of it. Now, the good thing is that you can shop around and find places that don't charge a ton more for these things. Some places do, I'm not going to name names, but there's other places who sell whole foods that cost more to buy these whole foods. But you can find sales.
Yeah.
And that's the point. And so either way, my grocery bill went back up to $600 a month.
Yeah.
And for a while, I kept beating myself up because I was like, man, I got my bill down to $400. And now we're back at $600. And I felt like it was because we were buying all this food. And we were a little bit, because of the whole pandemic thing. I felt like I had to stock up and hoard a little bit.
Yeah.
Because, I'm going less often than I used to the store. But then I kind of thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I'm buying far more quality foods. And that's just the reality of it. And that's just what my budget is. So now I proudly set my budget each month to $550, $600. If I stick around that, then I'm A-okay. So I think that's the key, is just finding what actually works for you in terms of your budget. I mean, again, you can't really compare yourself to other people. You shouldn't feel shame or guilt for going over in a category, month after month, because if that's what you're constantly doing, then let's face the reality. That's how much you spend in that category. The other option is to then start cutting back in other categories. I mean, I think the point is that if I go to the grocery store, each month and I'm spending $600, but then I'm also spending, $600 at Target or Amazon each month, and I go, well, what the heck did I buy at Target for
Don't
$600? And I
even
have no
know.
idea what I spent,
Yeah.
what I bought. Then that's something to start thinking about. That means that I'm not spending intentionally. That means
Mm.
that the stuff that I bought is no longer in my mind. When I go to the grocery store, I know exactly what I'm getting. I can say, well, I got these grass-fed steaks, and I got this organic milk, and I bought all these produce, and I made this, beautiful meal for my family. If I spend $200 on a trip to Target, I probably got like 2 pairs of pants, some random aisle thing that you're like, oh, that's cute,
Yeah.
Who knows what else? I mean, that's the thing. It's stuff that I probably don't care too much about unless that's what you went intentionally there for. So I think
Yeah.
coming back to our point of spending intentionally is that if you are spending a certain amount in a category each month and it's over your budget, but that's just what you spend, then perhaps you need to take a look at that and say, are the things that I'm buying in this category intentional or not? If they're intentional, then accept that that's what your budget is and figure out where else to pull from. If you say I'm spending way too much and I have no idea what I really got, then say, okay, I'm not really spending intentionally. I need to be more conscious about what I'm buying when I shop
Hmm.
at the store or in this category.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of leads us in well into the question of the week, which if
Mm.
you saw our post earlier today, then you already know, and hopefully you already have your answer,
Yeah.
which is, what is a category that you always seem to overspend in?
Yeah. So this was an interesting one. I thought we would have seen more people say groceries, but at least 2 or 3 people said gifts,
Yeah.
which I guess is another category that people typically will, maybe it's not even overspend in, but just like don't plan as well for
Hmm.
gifts. I think, and especially coming up, well, like the holidays are coming up. Um, I think that's a very easy category for people to end up going over their budget on, because, I mean, that's one of the love languages. Literally, giving gifts is a love language. And for a lot of people, giving gifts is buying something. There are lots of ways that you can give gifts, but for most, by the most traditional definition, it's buying something. And so, yeah, I could definitely see why people would go over budget, spending money on Christmas gifts and things like that.
Oh, definitely. I
Yeah.
think one of the things that when I thought about when I saw the gifts thing, I was like, oh yeah, I do always overspend in gifts. And then
Yeah.
I realized what I tend to overspend in is parties. The few times a year that I host a party, like,
Ah.
my son's birthday party or a birthday party for my husband or whoever it might be, I always say, okay, I'm gonna have a host this little thing. I'm not gonna go out of my way to do all this stuff. I'm not buying decorations. I'll whip up something, we'll buy pizzas and be done with it. 200 some odd dollars later, I bought decorations, balloons, helium tanks. I got all this food from Wegmans and other places. I've made this
Yeah.
whole display and platter. Like, I always just go way overboard, even though in my mind, it's going to be this simple, tiny little thing, so
It never is the case,
it
especially with
never,
parties.
it never
Well,
is.
and people always overestimate how much food they should have for parties. People never eat as much food at
Right.
parties too, so it just ends up being sort of not a waste because hopefully you can eat that
Yeah,
food.
leftovers.
Yeah, leftovers. Um,
Yeah.
I think the area that I was going to say groceries, but you actually kind of reminded me that we are in the middle of the pandemic. People aren't eating out as much, and so my dining out budget has gone down significantly. I mean, I wasn't hugely eating out a lot, but we would order, I'd get lunch maybe once a week out, and that's stopped completely. I don't get lunch at all. I don't leave my house
I know.
at
I
all.
know.
And so, but my food budget has definitely increased because we've been quarantined, and I was feeling kind of, a little upset that we were spending more in our food budget, but I realized that, we're still coming in less in terms of how much we spend per month in food. But I actually think my budget that I overspend in is probably Amazon,
Mhm.
because I haven't really been intentional about creating a separate budget for Amazon. I've
Mhm.
been considering things like I've been categorizing, um, everything by that's merchant category code. I don't know why I can't. I think I want to say categorization.
Yeah.
Anyways, but as we talked about earlier, because of Amazon, you can buy like 8 different things and they can fall into 8 different categories. It's just sort of out of whack. And I think I'm just going to have to create an Amazon category and just say, I'm not going to go over this amount on Amazon.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Anyone who has any tips for Amazon, let me know.
Honestly, what I do, I do go and separate it out. So I do subscribe and save each month, and it spans over. Now it's mostly groceries. I started doing it when I had my son, and so I was buying like diapers and formula and baby wipes and everything that I could on there, because it was super easy to just have it all delivered to the house and never have to worry about going out to get diapers or anything. And then I just started getting basically almost everything I could, because it was cheaper than at the traditional grocery store. So anything that was non-perishable, I would try to get through subscribe and save. And there's still a lot of items that we do get each month that, that we can through there. And, that's the thing is, I'm always going to have something from Amazon to buy each month. And, it is what it is. But I do try to go through and separate. And that's probably the most tedious part of tracking my expenses is when I shop at Amazon or a place that has different categories. For the most part, if I go to Aldi's and I happen to buy something in the Aldi's find aisle that's not a grocery item, I'm not going to worry about it. But if it's like something that has individual, charges that I can actually match up to what I bought, then I try to do, I try to do that. So I'm actually more conscious of how much I'm spending and where that money went.
Now, how long does it take you to do that?
I mean, like I said, it's usually only once a month because it's for my subscribe and save.
Okay, once a month, yeah.
It might take me, the problem is it takes me multiple days because it depends on when the charge clears. So it might be like 15 minutes for 2 or 3 days, like 15 minutes each day, just depending on.
That's not bad.
No, it's not bad, but having to go through like, you have to go to Mint and then make sure the charge cleared. And then you have to go to Amazon and go to your orders and see what order costs that much money. And then go back to Mint and update your category. Like I said, it's not a difficult thing. It's just tedious. And so that's probably the one thing that's more tedious than it. Everything else just kind of starts to automate itself over time with Mint, which is good. But with like the annoying thing now, and I have no idea why, because it's not like I bought a ton of gifts this year, but Mint is defaulting all my Amazon purchases to the gift category. And so I definitely have to go in and change it.
Go back and change it.
Buy any gifts this month?
Yeah. Well, I think this is like a good transition to our last point, which is, expenses can change over time, and therefore so should your spending. What happens in your life is a reflection of where you're spending your money. Stephanie and I always talk about that. Where you're spending your money reflects your values, but also where you're spending your money reflects where you are in your life. And so if you have a new job or a new home, or, you have a kid or you have a new kid, or maybe you don't, maybe you separate from your significant other or something like that, your expenses are going to reflect your life changes. And that's okay. Be comfortable with your expenses changing over time and fluctuating. This idea that like we are supposed to just spend this one finite amount of money per month and it never can deviate and it can never change, I think it's kind of a weird concept. And I will say, like, a lot of budgets don't necessarily adapt to those kinds of fluctuations. I mentioned earlier that, once a year we go to the cardiologist for my dog. And so, it's going to look like for the month of October that my pet category that I've blown my budget, for it, even though we know it's coming up and even though we know we've got the money for it, it's going to look like I've blown my budget for it because it's not what I typically spend on our pets per month. And that's okay. I can't, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm not going to not take my dog to the vet because I don't like that a certain category is, out. What I do is that you have to compensate for it somewhere else in your budget, especially if you are trying to stay within a certain amount of money, or a certain amount you want to spend per month. But, definitely don't feel like you're not, that you're failing at your budget just because your expenses have changed. Because if your life has changed or things come up in your life, then your expenses and your budget should change too. That's just natural.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like I said, with the subscribe and save and the diapers, my son's 6 now. He's certainly not in diapers, and we're not using wipes nearly as much, if at all, now. So, that's a whole category. Baby supplies was a whole
Whew.
category for
Yeah.
almost 3 years. And then it went away. And I was so happy because that was probably like $100 a month that I could now put towards something else. And daycare expenses. Once they start
Mm,
school, you don't have to worry about daycare expenses anymore for the most part. Sometimes you do, but, not the full time daycare, which is good. So that's the thing,
yeah.
is that you should take a look at your budget, fairly regularly, as often as you can, but at least once a year. So once
Yeah.
you start tracking your expenses and figure out how much you really should be spending in each category, figure out where you're spending intentionally, where you're not, and cut back in the ones that you're not, and it's fine to add to the ones that you are spending intentionally on. Once you figure out what that budget is, then take a look, every 3 months, 6 months, at least once a year, and say, okay, how have I done the past 3 months, past 6 months, however frequent it was, and see where, if you've gone over, if you've gone under, if you've had new categories that have come up that you didn't plan for but have started to become a regular thing for you, then take a
Hmm.
look at those things, because like we said, life changes, and this year life has changed for all of us.
It really, really has.
I
Yeah,
mean,
it
like I
definitely.
said, my gas category is completely down, but yet, my water bill and my electricity bill at my house, it hasn't like equaled out what the gas would have been, but it's
Yeah,
definitely gone up.
mine has
And
gone up too.
we get our water bill every quarter as well, and we just
Mm.
got ours for basically the past summer. And I was like, "Who? Do we have a water leak? Like, who used all this water? Stop flushing toilets! You'll wash your hands when it rains." And water is like the cheapest utility.
Yeah.
But that's the thing. I'm like, it just, there's the expenses that come up that you don't plan for. I couldn't plan for
Yeah.
that water bill because we've been washing our hands a lot lately, as we should
Yes.
be.
Yes, as we all should be, yes. Well, Steph, in that same vein, I think, sort of the last point I'd like to underscore is that um, building a budget that is not right for you, that doesn't reflect your expenses and the way you spend your money, is almost as bad as not having a budget at all.
Yeah.
And I think the reason being is that if you don't have a budget that actually works for you, you're going to fail at it, and you're going to get frustrated and you're going to give up. It's just going to feel, very dejecting. And that's not what we want for you. That's not what we want for everyone. So I think being realistic about what your monthly expenses actually are, what categories you really do have to spend in. Just like you said earlier, you are deciding to spend more in your grocery category because you want healthier foods. And really, in the long term, that $200 extra per month that you're spending in better foods is going to be better for your health in the long run. I'd much rather spend $200 on really good, high quality foods that are going to be good for my body than spending thousands and thousands of dollars trying to fight diabetes or any other kind of,
And for insulin
disease.
shots.
Yeah, insulin shots. I mean, it's just like there are so many more cons to spending, not buying high quality food.
Mhm.
And that's just obviously food is one category. I think for most people, groceries and food is probably your second biggest expense category after, your housing expenses. So that's why we keep talking about food. But
Also,
I
we
think
love food.
I love food. But just be realistic about what your expenses are and then create your budget around that. Don't try to fit yourself into some sort of like, especially if you're trying to pursue financial independence. I think I was kind of guilty about that. When I first heard about financial independence, I was just trying to get our expenses down as low as possible. And then we couldn't get there and I got frustrated by it. Now, luckily, I never gave up on it. I just had to find ways to adapt and just, ultimately say, this is how much we spend on groceries, or this is how much we have to spend on, whatever category. And that's okay. You can find other areas that you can compensate for, that you can pull from. So create a budget that actually works for you. Make your budget fit your lifestyle. Don't try to fit your lifestyle into your budget.
Absolutely. And so I think the key is, again, to spend intentionally. If you are spending where you find value and what's important to you, then you're spending in the right ways. And
Mhm.
that's what your budget is. That's how much
Yeah.
you should be spending.
Yeah.
Certainly, you can try to find deals and everything, but if you're spending what you're spending and that's important to you, then that's what you're spending. Be proud of
That's right.
that.
And be proud of it. Own it.
Own
Own
it.
it.
So the one thing we will say is our challenge of the week to you guys is, if you are not spending where you shouldn't be, we want you to apply the 24-hour rule to all unplanned purchases this week. So that means anything that you haven't budgeted for or didn't expect to have to pay for that was coming up, wait at least 24 hours before buying it. And that gives you time to think about if you really want to spend your money on that item. And so this isn't something that we've come up with. I've heard a lot of people talk about this. Some people even have the 72-hour rule, which is even better. But we're only giving you 24 hours. Just think about it. But, the key is, like, a prime example is Prime Day.
Prime Day.
Now, granted, Prime Day ends today. So if there's something on there that you saw and you really want, you're probably not going to have the deal tomorrow. But let's face it, if you just saw it today and you're like, oh, that's cool, I should get that thing, it's probably not something that's been on your mind for a while. Like, actually, a good example, and even though it wasn't a Prime Day deal, I have been wanting a new set of pots and pans for the longest time. And I know you've come to my house and I needed a new.
Oh, Stephanie, they got to go.
Don't use anymore, like I just don't use them anymore. And they've just been sitting there like mocking me, going, haha, we're gross, don't ever touch us. And so I really wanted a new set. And we had been talking about getting a fire pit, and all the ones we're looking at are like $100-something, $200-something. And it just hit me the other day. And it's like, if we are going to get fire pit and spend $100-something or $200-something on a fire pit, we really should be putting that money towards pots and pans, because I cook literally every single day, and that benefits the entire family. And it's a health issue, because the pots and pans that I had that I can't use anymore, it's because all the Teflon and nonstick stuff had started to scratch off, and that is a health issue. You just don't want to use it for that. So I'm like, you know what? Let's do something that's good for the family and good for everyone. And it has been on my mind for literally the longest time, well over a year. And so it wasn't a Prime Day deal, but 2 days ago, I bought myself a new set of pots and pans. They came in yesterday, and I love them. So that was worth it to me. It wasn't my plan. It wasn't in my budget this month, but it just was like, now's the time. This is right for me. And it has been on my mind for the longest time. Whereas if I go to Prime Day today and look at all the little deals, and I'm like, oh yeah, I could definitely use another pair of stretch capris or whatever. Like, no, I don't need another pair of pants. Okay.
I feel like we have an interloper in the comments. Somebody's asking for a fire pit. Is that your husband?
Maybe. I know. Well, Santa's coming soon, I hear, so maybe.
Yes, there you go.
I hear that if you build it, the fire will come.
There you go. If you build the fire pit, the fire.
Luckily, I saw that you were building a fire pit, so we're just going to drive up to Delaware and enjoy your fire pit, and make sure you get a hot tub to go with that fire pit, because that would be awesome.
I want a hot tub so badly. I got plenty of things on my wish list, but if I'm budgeting for it, and right now, a hot tub, as much as I want one, is just not a key priority for us. So we're not building a fund for it. Maybe one day, though, we will.
I know. That's true.
Yeah. No, I really like this tip. I talked about this last week, is that I'm a recovering shopaholic, and it took me years to build up that muscle where I could walk through a store and I could see things that I wanted, and that I was not planning to go and buy, and I could see things that I wanted, and I could turn around and leave, because I could look at it and try to evaluate, okay, is this actually going to provide me any kind of value? If it is, I can wait. I can always come back and get it, especially if it's not the last one. You can always come back and get it. Something else I will say is that, and this kind of goes with the 24-hour rule. If there's something you really want and it's the last one there at the store, it's the last one on Amazon or whatever, you could buy it and hold on to it. Don't open it. Don't use it. Hold on to it and wait that 24 hours or wait that 72 hours.
Yep.
And if you can really, if you can say, you know what, I thought about this. I don't actually need this. And that money it's going to go towards my long-term goals. It's going to go towards my financial independence, or it's going to go towards something that's more important to me. I'm going to take it back to the store, or I'm going to return it. And when you do that a couple times, here's a little pro tip. When you do that a couple times, you're going to get so annoyed by having to get in the car and go back to the store and return it, or get in the car and go drop it off at UPS for Amazon to return it, that you're not going to want to buy stuff anymore.
Yep.
And so, but it takes time and it's a practice. So
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I'm telling you, when we're going to do an episode about, curbing impulse shopping and spending and stuff like that, because that's something I still have to work to overcome. But this is something that the 24-hour rule can definitely apply to. And let us know if there's something that you have resisted buying over the course of the next week. Let us know. You can find us on Instagram or Facebook, and let us know if you were able to apply the 24-hour rule before you made that purchase.
I know. Yeah, I'm excited to hear what everyone has given up or waited for.
Yeah, I am too. All right. Well, why don't we kind of go back over what we've talked about today, just so we can reiterate these points. So, number one, we talked about that budgeting and tracking expenses are not the same thing. That in order to set your budget, you have to start tracking your expenses first. And that actually how you spend your money is what is tracking your expenses, and how you should be spending your money is what your budget is.
Yeah. And then tracking your expenses is the first step to creating your budget. So again, you have no idea how much you really should be budgeting each month until you know how much you're actually spending now. And not to say that what you're spending now is the right amount, but it's what you are spending, and it's a number for you to consider what you should try to budget around. So either you can figure out if it's way too much and you can try to cut back, or if you say, yep, that seems about right, I'm going to go with that.
That's right. And then next is determine the right amount for you for each category, and then build a budget that works for you. So don't try to, create a budget that doesn't fit for your lifestyle and try to fit your lifestyle around that. Create your budget around your lifestyle. Now, certainly there are categories where we can all cut back in, but if you set your budget based off of what your actual expenses are, you have a higher likelihood of being successful with your spending goals every single month, as opposed to trying to fit yourself into something that just doesn't work for your life.
Definitely. And then the last point was to review, adjust, and improve your budget. Check your budget regularly. If you're just starting to budget, then check it once a month, every other month. Check how much you're doing. If you've been budgeting for a while and you feel pretty confident in it, then you can stretch it out to 6 months or a year. But definitely at least once a year, check your budget, see how your spending trends are. If you're consistently going over in a certain category, then consider if that's really how much you should be spending. And if you're spending more in a category that you really don't find value in and haven't really been spending intentionally in, then figure out what you can do to start cutting back in that category. So it's okay if your budget isn't perfect and you have to make adjustments. That's the whole point. Life changes and your budget should change too.
That's right. All right. Well, that's our episode for this week. Next week, we are going to be switching gears. We're going to be talking about growing wealth and investing. And specifically, we're going to be talking about why Stephanie and I love index funds. And boy, do we love index funds. So if you have been wondering what you should be investing in, whether it's for your 401k or your IRAs or even a taxable brokerage account, you will not want to miss this episode. We're going to go all into index funds and why we love them and why we think they are such a great tool for growing and building wealth. All right. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also click the bell for notifications that lets you know when we're going live and when we have new videos on our channels. It also helps our videos be found in the search results. And, we have this mission at Winenance where we want to help everybody transform their lives through their finances. And so by clicking like and subscribe, you help us share that mission out with everyone and help everyone live their best lives through transforming their finances. So thank you so much. Don't forget about the challenge of the week, wait 24 hours, and we will see you all next week.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I will get everything set up now. All right, bye.
Bye, everyone.